Its scales gleamed like polished bronze under the filtered sunlight. Each slow breath made its body expand and contract, rippling with quiet menace. The creature's head rested motionless on the forest floor, eyes half-lidded in eerie calm. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. Only the steady hum of insects filled the air. Then Rafik pointed toward the creature's midsection. A massive bulge distorted its smooth form. It was unmistakable. Something large was inside. Zane's face went pale. He took a slow step backward. Sir, is that? Arif's voice was low, controlled, but heavy with shock. Yes, he said. It is. The bulge was unmistakably shaped, broad at the shoulders, tapering toward the hind legs. It was the size of a large dog. The air grew thick with dread. Rafik exhaled slowly, his voice trembling. The farmer's dog, the realization struck like a thunderclap. For a moment, no one moved. The jungle seemed to close in around them. Every leaf, every shadow holding its breath. Zane swallowed hard, unable to tear his eyes away from the creature. How long does it take for something like that? Arif's answer was quiet. Not long. Maybe hours, maybe less. A decision hung in the air, silent but urgent. The python's slow breathing told them it was still alive. If the dog had been swallowed recently, there was a chance, however slim, that it was still alive too. It was madness to even consider it, but Arif had seen stranger miracles in the wild. He looked to his men. We need to act now. Zane stared at him, disbelief flashing across his face. Sir, are you saying we're going to... Yes, Arif's tone was firm. We are not leaving this forest without trying. Freak opened his kit, pulling out a tranquilizer rifle. His hands moved fast, practiced. He loaded the dart, checked the pressure gauge, and steadied his aim. The python shifted slightly, sensing their presence. Its eyes opened, twin orbs of cold, unblinking gold. The world seemed to narrow to that gaze. Arif gave the signal. Rafik fired. The dart struck true, embedding just below the creature's neck. The python jerked violently, its coils tightening, its body rippling with sudden power. Leaves and dirt flew as it thrashed. The team scattered for cover, hearts pounding. The sheer force of the creature's movement sent shockwaves through the ground. Stay back, Arif shouted. Give it space. The python's massive body writhed and twisted, knocking down branches and shaking the roots of nearby trees. The tranquilizer began to take effect. Slowly but surely, after a few agonizing minutes, its movements weakened, thrashing slowed to a sluggish roll, a patrol. Then finally, the giant serpent fell still. For a long moment, no one moved. Only their ragged breathing broke the silence. Then Arif stepped forward, his boots sinking into the damp soil. He crouched beside the python, hand pressed lightly against its scales. He could feel the faint pulse of its slowed heartbeat beneath his palm. Sane, he said softly. Bring the cutting kit. The young man hesitated. Sir, what if... do not think, Arif interrupted. Just move. Zane obeyed. He fumbled with his pack, pulling out a surgical blade and sterilized gloves. Gloves. His fingers trembled. They had rescued people from floods, fires, and earthquakes, but nothing could have prepared them for this. Arif positioned himself near the midsection of the python, where the bulge was most pronounced. The shape inside shifted slightly, or perhaps it was only their imagination. Either way, they had no time to lose. He drew a deep breath. The jungle was utterly silent now, as if every living thing had turned its gaze toward them. Then, with slow precision, he pressed the blade to the snake's scaled hide. The skin gave way under the blade, tough but yielding. A faint hiss of air escaped as the cut deepened. The smell that followed was overpowering, a thick organic stench of bile and decay. Zane gagged and turned his face away. Arif worked carefully, widening the incision. The bulge began to reveal what lay within. Matted fur, streaked with saliva and mud. It was the German Shepherd. Its body was limp, glistening, covered in the serpent's fluids. For a heart-stopping moment, it appeared lifeless. But then, a twitch, a faint, involuntary movement of the paw. Zane gasped. Sir, it's alive. Arif's pulse surged. It's alive. He dropped the blade and reached inside, gripping the dog's shoulders with both hands. Help me, he shouted. Rafik grabbed the hind legs. Together, they pulled, slowly, carefully, until the dog's slick body slid free from the python's belly. The forest was filled with the sound of their effort, grunts, breath, and the wet slither of flesh. Finally, the shepherd lay on the ground, motionless but breathing. Its chest rose in shallow, uneven bursts. Its fur was plastered with slime, but its heart still beat. Arif tore off his jacket and wrapped it around the trembling animal. Easy, boy, easy, he whispered. The dog's eyes fluttered weakly, its tongue moving faintly as if to bark. Zane dropped to his knees beside it, tears welling in his eyes. Oh, I cannot believe it survived. Arif glanced at the python's inert body. Its golden eyes now half closed, its breathing shallow. We still have work to do, he said quietly. Prepare the stretcher. We are getting both of them out. The rescue team worked quickly beneath the towering canopy, the filtered sunlight shifting through layers of mist and foliage. The jungle felt alive again, whispering with the sound of insects and distant birds. But for the men, every sound carried new weight. Arif knelt beside the rescued German shepherd, now wrapped in his jacket, the animal's chest rising with fragile rhythm. The creature's fur, slick with moisture and bile, clung to its body and steam rose faintly from its warmth meeting the cool forest air. Zane pressed his ear close to the dog's ribs, listening for a heartbeat, his brow furrowed with hope and fear. It is still there, he said, his voice trembling. Arif nodded once, his expression unreadable. They had defied nature itself, pulling life from the gut of a predator, but their work was far from over. The forest around them seemed to sense the disturbance. Unseen creatures stirred. The undergrowth rustled with cautious curiosity. The python lay still nearby, its immense body stretched across the clearing like a fallen tree, its breathing shallow and slow under the tranquilizer's grip. Rafik opened the supply pack, pulling out a roll of tough canvas and lightweight poles that could be assembled into a stretcher. His hands moved fast, practiced by years of emergency work. Mud smeared his sleeves, sweat ran down his temples, and the scent of the jungle, wet earth, animal musk, and the sharp tang of adrenaline filled the air. The sound of snapping branches echoed faintly from somewhere beyond the clearing. Ha! Zane froze, his hand automatically moving to the holstered flare gun at his side. Arif raised a hand, signaling for silence. The noise came again. Closer this time, a low shuffle, followed by a guttural grunt. The forest was never empty. In this part of the world, every sound belonged to something that watched, hunted, or fled. A moment later, two dark shapes emerged through the foliage, macaques, drawn by curiosity, their bright eyes gleaming as they studied the strange scene. Arif exhaled softly, his muscles relaxing. Just monkeys, he murmured. But the tension remained thick as the mist. They had to move quickly before the tranquilizer wore off or other predators caught the scent of blood. The stretcher was ready. They lifted the German shepherd carefully, the dog letting out a weak whine as it was placed upon the canvas. Its fur trembled under their touch, a sign of pain and exhaustion. Zane secured the straps gently, murmuring reassurance as if his voice alone could hold the animal's spirit together. Arif looked toward the python again. It was an enormous creature, a masterpiece of evolution, deadly and magnificent. Even in its subdued state, its presence commanded respect. Arif knelt beside it, inspecting the incision he had made earlier. He felt no joy in harming it. This was not a battle of revenge, but survival. Nature was cruel, but never evil. A Rafik, he said. We take it too. Rafik hesitated. The snake? Sir, the dog needs urgent care. Carrying that monster will slow us down. Arif's gaze hardened. That animal is part of this. The department will want it for study. It deserves understanding, not bullets. Zane exchanged a glance with Rafik but said nothing. Orders were orders. They rigged another stretcher, simpler, reinforced with bamboo rods, and with effort managed to roll part of the python's massive length onto it. It was like lifting a coiled rope of living muscle, even sedated. Sweat soaked through their uniforms, and veins stood out in their arms as they lifted demos, Swinona. When both stretchers were ready, Arif took one end of the dog's stretcher, Rafik the other, while Zane followed behind, carrying the tranquilizer rifle and equipment. The journey back to the river would take hours through uneven ground and dense vegetation. The sun had risen higher now, its heat pressing down like a weight. Humidity wrapped around them, making every breath feel heavier. Their boots slipped in the mud, insects buzzed relentlessly around their ears, and vines tugged at their legs like living snares. Yet they pressed on. The sound of the river was their only guide, a low, constant murmur promising safety and extraction. Every few minutes, Arif looked back to check the dog. Its breathing remained shallow but steady, its paws twitching occasionally as if dreaming of open fields. He remembered the farmer's trembling voice when he made the call for help, the disbelief that hope could still exist. Now that hope was wrapped in his jacket, and fragile and alive, the thought gave him strength. But the jungle does not forgive intrusion easily. As they neared a narrow ravine, Rafik suddenly stopped. The ground ahead had collapsed during the last monsoon, leaving a steep drop masked by fallen leaves. The bridge of roots that once spanned it was half gone, dangling precariously over dark, flowing water below. They could not cross carrying both stretchers at once. Arif assessed the gap. "We take the dog first," he decided. Rafik, hold the line. Zane, clear the path. They worked swiftly, cutting low branches and tying a rope between two trees to use as a guide for Tunthwasilajah. The air smelled of moss and rot, the faint gurgle of the stream echoing below like whispered warnings. Carefully, they began to cross. Arif stepped first, testing each foothold. Mud slid beneath his boots, and sweat trickled down his neck. He gripped the stretcher tightly, every muscle tense. Below them, the water churned against hidden rocks, dark and uninviting. Halfway across, a branch cracked sharply. The sound sliced through the air. Zane's head snapped toward the forest's edge. Something moved, large, silent, and watching. For a heartbeat, he saw it. A shape slipping through the shadows, too big to be a monkey, too quiet to be a boar. His voice came out strained. Sir, something is following us." Arif did not look up. Keep moving," he said. Eyes forward." The bridge creaked beneath their combined weight. Every step felt like walking on the edge of the world. They made it across. The stretcher touched solid ground, and Arif released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Then they turned to retrieve the second stretcher, the python. Rafik braced the bamboo frame, and with effort they began to slide it forward. The creature's body shifted slightly, its muscles twitching beneath its scales. The tranquilizer was wearing thin. Arif swore under his breath. "Move faster," he ordered. They had barely reached the midpoint when the python's head lifted. Its golden eyes blinked, dazed but alert. A low hiss vibrated through its throat. The sound made the hair on Zane's arms stand upright. He steadied his aim with the rifle, finger trembling on the trigger. "Wait!" Arif barked. "Do not shoot unless it strikes." The python's body rippled. It sensed movement, confusion, perhaps pain. Then, with startling speed, it coiled. The bamboo poles splintered under its strength, the stretcher snapping apart. The entire frame tilted. In an instant, the weight shifted dangerously toward the ravine's edge. Rafik lunged forward, grabbing one of the ropes. Zane dropped the rifle and grabbed another. The stretcher dangled over the drop, the massive reptile twisting violently. Mud and pebbles rained into the water below. "Hold it!" Arif shouted, his voice cut through the chaos, clear and commanding. The rope burned against Zane's palms. Rafik's boots slipped, but he braced against a root, choose against a root. Together they heaved, pulling the weight back inch by inch. The python's movements grew weaker again, exhaustion overtaking its fading strength. With a final grunt of effort, they hauled the stretcher back onto solid ground. For a long time, none of them spoke. Their breathing came in ragged bursts. The jungle had fallen silent again, as if observing the strange battle between man and nature. Arif wiped sweat from his brow and crouched beside the python. Its eyes met his for a fleeting moment, not in malice, but in recognition. "You will live," Arif said softly, "just not here." They resecured the creature, this time binding the stretcher tighter with additional ropes. Then, gathering what strength remained, they resumed their march toward the river. The sun was already sinking low, its golden light filtering through the canopy like molten fire. Time was running short. By the time they reached the riverbank, the jungle had begun to hum with evening life. Cicadas screamed from every branch, frogs croaked in the shallows, and distant parrots screeched overhead. Their boat, a narrow aluminum craft fitted with a small outboard motor, waited where they had left it that morning. It was a fragile promise of safety in a wild world. They laid the German Shepherd gently inside, cushioning it with spare jackets. Rafik checked its breathing again and nodded. Still alive. Arif turned to the python's stretcher, which they secured at the stern. Even sedated, it occupied nearly half the boat's length. As the engine sputtered to life, the jungle seemed to close behind them, swallowing the clearing where the impossible had happened. The boat glided over the murky water, leaving a trail of ripples that shimmered in the fading light. The river carried the scent of the forest, earth, life, and memory. Arif sat at the bow, eyes fixed on the horizon where the first stars began to pierce the twilight. The German Shepherd lay still beside him, its breath shallow but steady, its heart beating against the odds. Behind him, the python stirred faintly, bound but alive. Man and nature, predator and prey, survivor and rescuer, all carried together by the same dark water. And far upstream, somewhere deep within the forest's endless green, unseen eyes watched them drift away. The night had fallen thick and absolute. The river wound through the jungle like a ribbon of black glass, reflecting nothing but the ghostly shimmer of starlight above. The motor hummed softly, breaking the stillness in rhythmic pulses while the forest sang its nocturnal chorus, frogs, crickets, and unseen wings brushing through the humid air. Captain Arif Malik sat at the bow, his eyes heavy but alert. The events of the day replayed in his mind like fragments of an old film. The cries in the mist, the glint of scales, the impossible rescue. Each image felt both surreal and sacred. Reporters arrived, their cameras flashing, eager to capture the miracle. But Arif gave only one statement. A courage does not always belong to those who save. Sometimes it belongs to those who endure. As the day faded, the team gathered near the riverbank again. The German shepherd, now resting comfortably, lay beside them, its head propped on a folded blanket. It lifted its gaze to Arif, a faint spark of gratitude shining in its amber eyes. Arif reached out, placing a hand gently on its neck. "Well done, soldier," he whispered. "You made it home." The wind rustled through the tall grass, carrying with it the scent of rain and life. Somewhere upriver, the forest stirred. The call of birds, the ripple of unseen movement. Life continued, indifferent yet eternal. And deep within that vast wilderness, perhaps under another canopy of mist and vine, the giant python moved again, slow, silent, and unbound, returning to the rhythm of the wild. It would hunt again one day, as it was born to do. The cycle would repeat, as it always had. But for now, a balance had been restored. The forest had taken, and the forest had given back. Man had intervened not as conqueror, but as witness. A small, determined guardian of the fragile thread that connects all living things. The sun broke fully through the clouds, bathing the river in brilliant gold. The rescue team stood quietly, watching the light dance upon the water. In their silence was pride, exhaustion, and something deeper, reverence. Because in the heart of the jungle where death and life intertwined, they had seen something rare. They had seen mercy win. And as the current carried the day forward, the story of the brave German shepherd and the men who refused to give up would travel far beyond those trees, whispered in villages, written in reports, and remembered by all who believed that courage still lived in the wild.